Picture this, a furnace so hot that the soldiers who dragged 3 men toward it dropped dead before they could even let go. The fire was not just burning. It was devouring everything in its path, and 3 young men, bound hand and foot, were thrown into the center of it. Everyone in that kingdom expected ashes. The king expected silence. The system expected compliance. What came out of that furnace shook every throne in the ancient world, and it is about to shake yours. Because this is not a children's Bible story. Daniel chapter 3 is a tactical blueprint. It is a divine manual for what happens when God's chosen people refuse to bow to the system that kidnapped them, renamed them, and tried to erase every trace of who they were. And if you are black in America in 2026, you already know the furnace. You have felt the heat of economic exclusion. You have walked through the flames of mass incarceration. You have smelled the smoke of educational sabotage and generational spiritual warfare designed to break you from the inside out. The temperature has been turned up to 7 times hotter than normal, and they expected you to be ash by now, but you are still here. And before this video is over, I am going to show you exactly why. Because Daniel chapter 3 does not end with a funeral. It ends with a promotion. And the one detail that terrified every empire that heard this story is the same detail that the modern system does not want you to understand. Stay with me. Every word matters. Now let me take you back to where it started. Babylon, the most powerful empire the ancient world had ever seen. King Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Jerusalem, sacked the temple, and carried away the finest young men of Israel as captives. Daniel chapter 1 verse 3 tells us he specifically ordered his chief officer to bring young men of the royal family and the nobility, teenagers, the best and brightest, taken from their homeland and brought into the heart of the empire that destroyed everything they knew. And the first thing Babylon did was change their names. Think about that. Before they taught them the language, before they trained them in Babylonian science and literature, the very first act of the empire was to strip their identity. Daniel chapter 1 verse 7 says the chief official gave them new names. Hananiah, whose name meant, "The Lord is gracious," became Shadrach. Mishael, whose name meant, "Who is what God is," became Meshach. Azariah, whose name meant, "The Lord helps," became Abednego. Every single one of their Hebrew names contained the name of God. Every single Babylonian replacement name erased it. Now let me ask you something. Does that pattern sound familiar? Because that is exactly what happened on the shores of West Africa, on the decks of slave ships, and on the auction blocks of the American South. Names that carried lineage, identity, spiritual authority, erased. Replaced with the names of the system. Replaced with the language of the empire. And just like Babylon, the goal was never just labor. It was compliance. It was worship. It was the complete erasure of who you were before they took you. Because here is what Nebuchadnezzar did next. Daniel chapter 3 verses 1 through 6. He built an image of gold, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he called together every official in the empire, the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the other provincial officials. And he gave them one command. When the music plays, you bow. Let me be crystal clear about what this was. This was not worship in the way you might think of it. This was a compliance test. Nebuchadnezzar did not care whether you loved the image. He did not care whether you believed in it. He cared that you bowed. The music was the signal. The bowing was the proof. And the furnace was the consequence for anyone who stayed standing. That is how every system of domination works. It does not need your heart. It needs your knees. And here is the detail that most people miss. The music played. Daniel chapter 3 verse 7. And every nation, Every tongue, every people group in that empire fell down and worshipped the golden image. Every single one. The system worked perfectly. The compliance was total. Every ethnicity, every culture, every conquered people heard the music and bowed without hesitation. Because the furnace was real, the threat was credible, and survival meant submission, except for 3 men. 3 Hebrew boys, standing upright in a sea of bowed heads. Young men who had already lost their homeland, their families, their names, their language. Men who had every reason in the world to just bow and survive. But something inside them would not bend. Something connected to the names they were given at birth, the names that carried the identity of God, refused to kneel before a golden substitute. Now think about what that cost. This was not quiet resistance. This was visible. In a crowd of thousands, possibly tens of thousands, bowing in unison, 3 men standing. Upright is the loudest statement in the room. Everybody saw it. The officials saw it. The soldiers saw it. And you can be certain the people who had already bowed saw it too. Because nothing threatens a system of compliance more than someone who chooses to stand when standing means the furnace. It doesn't just challenge the king. It challenges every person who already made the decision to bow. And that is why the response was so violent. The Chaldeans came forward immediately. Daniel chapter 3 verse 8 says they came forward and denounced the Jews. Not just reported them, denounced them. And notice the language. They did not say, 3 officials refused to bow. They said, these Jews. They identified them by ethnicity first. Before the crime, before the disobedience, the accusers made sure everyone knew what these men were. Because in every empire, the refusal to comply is never just disobedience. When it comes from the conquered, it becomes an ethnic threat, a racial problem, a group that needs to be dealt with. You have seen this before. You are watching it right now. So the accusation reached the king. Daniel chapter 3 verses 13 through 15. And Nebuchadnezzar's response wasn't measured. It was not diplomatic. The Bible says he was furious with rage. Furious. This is a king who has conquered the known world, who commands the largest army on earth, who just built a 90-foot golden idol to prove his absolute power. And 3 captive Hebrew boys just made him look powerless in front of his entire government. He summoned them. And here is what is fascinating. He gave them a second chance. He said, now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you're ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And then he added 7 words that changed everything. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Let that question sit for a moment, because that is not just a king talking. That is the voice of every empire that believes it is bigger than God. That is the voice of every system that looks at the oppressed and says, who is going to save you? Who is coming for you? What God do you think has the power to reach inside my system and pull you out? You have heard this voice in courtrooms. You have heard it in boardrooms. You have heard it in the halls of Congress. It is the voice of Babylon. And it always asks the same question. What God can deliver you from my hand? Now here is where these 3 men gave the most dangerous answer in the history of faith. Daniel chapter 3 verses 16 through 18. Read every word carefully. King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Do you understand what just happened? They did not negotiate. They did not ask for more time. They did not try to find a compromise. They did not offer to bow privately while standing publicly. They looked at the most powerful man on earth and said three things. First, we do not need to defend ourselves to you. Our God does not require your permission or your understanding. Second, our God is able to deliver us. He has the power. Third, and this is the part that terrifies every empire, even if he doesn't deliver us, we still will not bow. That third statement is the most radical declaration of faith in the entire Bible, because it removes the condition. Most people serve God because they expect deliverance. They expect the blessing. They expect the breakthrough. And when the breakthrough does not come, they bow. But these three men said the outcome does not determine our posture. We do not serve God because he saves us. We serve God because he is God. Whether the fire burns us or not, our knees will not touch that ground. And this is the exact posture that has carried Black America through 400 years of fire. Every generation had men and women who heard the music of the system and refused to bow. Nat Turner refused to bow. Harriet Tubman refused to bow. Fannie Lou Hamer refused to bow. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote letters from a jail cell, the modern furnace, and refused to bow. Medgar Evers knew the furnace was hot enough to kill him, and he still would not. Boo! And every one of them, if you asked them why, would have given you the same answer. Even if he does not deliver me, I will not serve your gods. That is not stubbornness. That is not pride. That is a spiritual inheritance. That is the DNA of the three Hebrew boys running through the bloodline of every black man, woman, and child who has ever looked at the system and said, "You can heat it up, you can throw me in, but I will not worship what you built." The furnace was never the threat. The threat was the bowing. And these men decided that death in the fire was better than life on their knees. The king had no answer for that. No empire ever does. Now here is where the story takes a turn that most preachers rush past. Daniel chapter 3 verse 19. Nebuchadnezzar's face was distorted with rage. The Bible uses that specific detail. His face changed, his composure broke, and he gave the order. Heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Not twice, not 3 times, 7. Let me show you why that number matters. In biblical numerology, 7 is the number of divine completion. It represents fullness, totality, the absolute maximum. When God rested on the 7th day, creation was complete. When Naaman dipped in the Jordan 7 times, his healing was complete. When the walls of Jericho fell on the 7th day after 7 circuits, the victory was complete. So when Nebuchadnezzar ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter, he was unknowingly invoking the number of God's completion. He thought he was reaching maximum punishment. But in God's economy, he was setting the stage for maximum miracle. The enemy always overplays his hand. Always. And here is the detail that tells you everything about how systems of oppression work. Daniel chapter 3 verse 22. The furnace was so hot that the flames killed the soldiers who threw them in. Read that again. The men who enforced the king's order, the ones who carried out the system's violence, were consumed by the very fire they were ordered to maintain. The system destroyed its own enforcers. The guards died. The prisoners survived. Let that pattern sink in because it has repeated across every empire in history. The slave catchers of the American South destroyed their own humanity, enforcing a system that eventually consumed their economy, their moral standing, and their legacy. The overseers on the plantations became prisoners of the very brutality they administered. The architects of Jim Crow built a system that hollowed out Southern education, infrastructure, and economic growth for a century. Every time the system heats the furnace to destroy God's people, it burns its own hands first. That is not coincidence. That is divine architecture. Now, let me walk you through the modern furnaces that have been heated 7 times for Black America. Because this is not ancient history. This is your life. Furnace 1. Mass incarceration. In 1970, there were roughly 200,000 people in American prisons. By 2026, that number has exceeded 2 million. The explosion was not driven by an increase in crime. It was driven by policy. The war on drugs, mandatory minimums, 3 strikes laws, all designed to funnel one specific demographic into the fire. A black man born in America today has a 1 in 3 chance of spending time in prison. 1 in 3. That furnace was heated on purpose. Furnace 2. The crack epidemic. In the 1980s, crack cocaine flooded black neighborhoods across America. Congressional hearings later revealed that the CIA had knowledge of drug trafficking routes that fed directly into these communities. The punishment for crack, used predominantly in black communities, was 100 times more severe than the punishment for powder cocaine, used predominantly in white communities. Same drug, different form, different sentence. That is a furnace heated to specification. Furnace 3. Redlining. The Federal Housing Administration literally drew red lines around black neighborhoods and told banks not to lend there. For decades, black families were systematically denied the primary wealth-building tool in American life, home ownership. The effects are still measurable today. The average white family holds roughly 10 times the wealth of the average black family. That gap was not accidental. It was engineered. Furnace number 3. Furnace 4. The school-to-prison pipeline. Underfunded schools in black neighborhoods connected directly to an over-policed juvenile system. Children suspended at higher rates, expelled at higher rates, arrested on school grounds at higher rates. A 12-year-old black boy in a public school is more likely to be disciplined than educated. That is not a failure of the system. That is the system working exactly as it was designed. Furnace 5. Medical experimentation and healthcare disparity. The Tuskegee experiment ran for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, deliberately withholding treatment from black men with syphilis to study the disease's progression. The Henrietta Lacks case. Forced sterilization programs in over 30 states. And today, black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. The fire in this furnace is measured in bodies. Furnace 6. Family court destruction. Since the Moynihan Report in 1965, federal policy has systematically incentivized the removal of black fathers from the home, welfare requirements that penalized married households, child support enforcement that criminalized poverty, a family court system that removes children from black homes at rates that dwarf every other demographic. The black family unit was targeted because the empire understood what Nebuchadnezzar understood. Separated people are easier to control. Furnace 7. Economic strangulation. Hiring discrimination that study after study confirms. Identical resumes with different names yielding dramatically different callback rates. Business loan denial rates for black entrepreneurs running 2 to 3 times higher than their white counterparts, even with identical credit profiles. Wage gaps that have barely moved in 50 years, despite every program, every initiative, every promise. 7 furnaces, heated to maximum, and yet, you are still here. Your faith is still here. Your families are still fighting. Your communities are still building. Your prayers are still going up. The soldiers who threw you in are being consumed by the very system they maintain. But you are walking around in the fire, and that fact, that undeniable, measurable, documented fact, is the evidence that something supernatural is happening. Someone is in the furnace with you. Now we arrive at the moment that changes everything. Daniel chapter 3 verses 24 and 25. The king leaped to his feet in amazement. He asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They answered, "Certainly, your majesty." And Nebuchadnezzar said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. Stay with me here, because every word of this matters. First, they were bound when they went in. Their hands and feet were tied. They were wearing their robes, their trousers, their turbans, and their other clothes. They were fully restrained. But inside the fire, they were loose, walking around, free. The fire did not burn them. The fire burned their bonds. Do you hear what I am telling you? God did not prevent the furnace. He used the furnace to set them free. The very thing the enemy designed as punishment became the instrument of liberation. Think about what that means for you. Every system of bondage that has been wrapped around Black America, every chain of poverty, every rope of discrimination, every binding of self-doubt planted by 4 centuries of being told you are less than, the fire is burning those off. Not you. The fire cannot touch you, but it is disintegrating everything that was holding you back. The suffering was never the punishment. The suffering was the process. God was burning bonds you did not even know you were wearing. And then the second revelation, the 4th man. Nebuchadnezzar saw 4 figures in that fire, and the 4th one had a form that looked divine. Now here is what is remarkable. Nebuchadnezzar was a pagan king. He worshipped Marduk and the gods of Babylon. He had no framework for understanding what he was seeing, but even he, with no knowledge of the true God, could see the divine presence in the fire. He could not name who it was. He could not explain it. But he could not deny it either. That is the power of God's presence in your life. When God walks with you through the fire, even your enemies can see it. They may not understand it. They may not be able to put a name on it. But something about the way you carry yourself, something about the way you survived what should have destroyed you, something about the peace you have in the middle of the flames, it is visible, it is undeniable, and it terrifies them, because it proves that whatever they built to destroy you is not working. And if the fire cannot touch you, then the builder of the fire has a much bigger problem than he realized. Now let me show you this pattern playing out in real time. Because God did not stop doing this after Daniel chapter 3, he has been walking into furnaces with his people ever since. Look at the post-slavery period in America. The furnace of chattel slavery was the most brutal system of human bondage the modern world has ever produced. 246 years of forced labor, family separation, torture, and dehumanization. And what came out of that furnace? The most vibrant cultural explosion in human history. Jazz, blues, gospel, the Harlem Renaissance, Black literature, Black theology, Black business districts so prosperous they called them Black Wall Streets. The fire did not destroy the people, it burned the bonds. And what walked out of the furnace was so powerful that the system had to burn Tulsa to the ground just to slow it down. Look at the Civil Rights era. Jim Crow was a furnace heated 7 times, separate and unequal, lynching as public entertainment, voter suppression enforced by terrorism. And what walked out of that fire? A movement that changed the conscience of the entire world. Leaders who spoke with such moral authority that presidents had to listen. Legislation that redefined American law. And a generation of Black Americans who refused to bow even when the dogs were released and the water hoses were turned on. They walked through that fire with a 4th man and came out with their dignity burning brighter than anything the fire could produce. And look at right now, this very moment. Black America is experiencing a spiritual awakening that the mainstream media refuses to cover. Church attendance among young Black Americans is rising while it declines in every other demographic. Black-owned businesses increased by over 30% in the last 5 years. Land purchases by Black families are at levels not seen since the early 20th century. The system has heated every furnace it has: mass incarceration, economic exclusion, cultural erasure, medical disparity, political disenfranchisement. 7 furnaces, maximum heat. And Black America is not just surviving. Black America is walking around in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and the 4th man is clearly visible. The system is watching. And just like Nebuchadnezzar, they are leaping to their feet in amazement, because the math does not add up. By every metric the system uses to predict outcomes, Black America should have been consumed by now. But the metrics did not account for the 4th man. They never do. Now here is the verse that nobody preaches hard enough. Daniel chapter 3 verse 27. And the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisers crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Read that one more time. No smell of fire, not a hair singed, their clothes intact. Every official in the Babylonian Empire gathered around these 3 men and inspected them, looking for evidence of the furnace, and they found nothing. 0. The fire left absolutely no trace on them. Now let me tell you why that detail is the most dangerous sentence in the entire chapter. Because the system does not just want to destroy you. The system wants to mark you. The system wants the evidence of the fire on your skin, in your speech, in your posture, in your psychology. The system needs you to smell like smoke, so that everywhere you go, people know you have been through the furnace. It needs the trauma visible. It needs the damage documented. It needs you walking into every room carrying the proof that the fire was real and that it worked. But God's protection is so thorough, so complete, so total, that the fire designed to define you could not even leave a scent. Not the smell, not the singe, not the scar. When God walks with you through the furnace has no jurisdiction over your body. Let that sink in. The fire could not even leave a memory on their skin. And this is exactly why the mainstream church reduces Daniel chapter 3 to a children's story. Felt board figures, cartoon flames, a nice moral about being brave. Because if Black America truly understood what this passage means, the entire architecture of fear collapses. If the furnace cannot mark the chosen, then the threat of the furnace loses its power. And the power of every empire in history has always depended on the credibility of the furnace. Take away the fear of the fire, and you take away the empire's primary weapon. Think about what the system spent 400 years telling Black people. You are damaged. You are broken. You carry generational trauma that you will never escape. Your families are dysfunctional. Your communities are violent. Your culture is inferior. Every single one of these narratives is an attempt to make you smell like smoke, to make you carry the evidence of the furnace wherever you go, to make you believe that the fire did what it was designed to do. But look around you. Something does not add up. By every measure of what the fire should have done, the evidence is not there. Black joy exists in spaces where joy should have been impossible. Black faith thrives in the exact conditions designed to kill it. Black love persists across generations that were systematically separated. Black excellence shows up in every field, every discipline, every arena, often without the resources, the mentorship, or the access that others take for granted. The system keeps looking for the smell of smoke, and it keeps finding people who walked through the fire without a mark. I am going to say something directly to you right now. You have been through fire. Your family has been through fire. Maybe you are in the fire right now as you watch this. The system expects you to smell like smoke. They expect the trauma on your face, in your voice, in the way you carry yourself. But something about you confuses them. You should not be standing. You should not be whole. You should not still be believing. You should not still be loving your children, building your businesses, studying your Bible, praying your prayers. By the math of the empire, you should be ashes. But you are not. And the reason you are not is the same reason those 3 Hebrew boys were not. Someone was in the fire with you. The fourth man has been in your furnace the entire time, and his presence did not just protect you from the flames. It ensured that the fire could not even leave a trace. Now, if the fire did not destroy you, and you are still standing right now, if you walked through something that should have ended you, and you are still here watching this video, still breathing, still believing, I want you to type furnace proof in the comments. Do not be quiet about this. Let them see how many of us walked out without the smell. Let them count the furnace-proof nation and understand that the math of their system will never, ever add up. Now watch what happened next, because this is where God does something that no one in Babylon expected. Daniel chapter 3 verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Let the weight of that land, the same king who built the golden image, the same king who heated the furnace 7 times, the same king who asked, 'What God can deliver you from my hand?' That king is now praising the God of the 3 men he tried to destroy. The system that built the furnace is now acknowledging the God who made the furnace irrelevant. This is not quiet deliverance. This is not a private miracle that happened behind closed doors. This is the ruler of the known world, on the record, in front of every official in his government, admitting that the God of the captives is greater than the God of the empire. And he did not stop there. Daniel chapter 3 verse 29. Then the king issued a decree. Any nation, people, or tongue that says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save in this way. The same governmental power that threatened to burn them is now threatening anyone who disrespects their God. The machinery of empire flipped completely. The furnace that was pointed at them is now pointed at their enemies. Think about the strategic genius of what God just did. He did not destroy Babylon. He did not remove his people from Babylon. He converted the power of Babylon into a shield for his people. The empire's own enforcement mechanism, the same threat system that was used against the 3 men, is now deployed in their defense. God does not just deliver you from the system. He rewires the system to serve you. And then comes the detail that most sermons never get to. Daniel chapter 3 verse 30. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Promoted. They were not rescued and sent home. They were not quietly released and told to keep their heads down. They were elevated, given more authority, more responsibility, more influence inside the same system that tried to kill them. God's plan was never escape. It was occupation of the high places the enemy built. This is the pattern that applies directly to Black America right now. God did not design deliverance as exit. He designed it as elevation within the system. Joseph was a slave in Egypt and became the 2nd most powerful man in the empire. Daniel was a captive in Babylon and became chief advisor to the king. Moses grew up inside Pharaoh's own house before God used him to dismantle Pharaoh's system from the inside. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked through the furnace and came out with a promotion. Not a ticket out. A promotion. Look at what is happening right now. Black Americans are not fleeing the system. They are occupying positions of influence inside it at rates that the system never anticipated. Black executives in Fortune 500 companies. Black judges on federal benches. Black entrepreneurs building generational wealth in industries they were excluded from a generation ago. Black pastors with congregations that outpace mega churches in every other demographic. The furnace was supposed to be the end. Instead, it was the qualifying exam for the promotion. And here is the prophetic layer that connects Daniel 3 to this exact moment in time. Every indicator suggests that the system is being forced, not persuaded, forced to acknowledge what it tried to destroy. When major corporations spend billions on diversity and inclusion initiatives, that is not generosity. That is a king being forced to issue a decree. When universities create programs specifically designed to recruit and retain Black students after centuries of exclusion, that is the province of Babylon offering promotions. When political campaigns spend more money courting the Black vote than any other demographic, that is the empire recognizing the power it tried to put in the furnace. They heated the furnace 7 times. They threw you in bound. They expected ashes. And now they have to watch you walk around free in the fire with someone they cannot name but cannot deny. They have to write laws protecting what they tried to destroy. They have to fund what they tried to starve. They have to acknowledge what they tried to erase. That is not progress. That is vindication. That is Daniel chapter 3 verse 28, happening in front of your eyes. Your vindication is not something you are waiting for. It is something that is actively unfolding. And every year, the evidence gets louder. So let me bring this home. Because Daniel chapter 3 is not ancient history. It is not a flannel board Bible story for children. It is a living prophecy that is playing out in the life of Black America right now, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, detail by detail. The kidnapping from the homeland. That happened. The renaming, the erasure of identity, the forced assimilation into Babylon's culture. That happened. The compliance test, the demand to bow to the system's image of success, the system's version of God, the system's definition of who you are supposed to be. That is happening right now, every single day. The accusation by ethnicity first. That happens every time a Black man walks into a room and is seen as a threat before he is seen as a person. The furnace heated 7 times. Mass incarceration, economic exclusion, healthcare disparity, educational sabotage, family court destruction, cultural erasure, spiritual warfare. 7 furnaces, maximum heat. All active, all documented, all designed to produce ashes. And then the part they cannot explain, the survival, the persistence, the faith, the 4th man in the fire, the fact that after 400 years of the hottest furnace any people group on earth has ever endured, Black America is still standing, still praying, still building, still believing, still raising children who carry the names of God, even when the world tries to replace those names with numbers, not even the smell of smoke. That is who you are. That has always been who you are. Now I want to pray over you. And I want you to receive this prayer, not as words on a screen, but as a decree from the mouth of the 4th man who has been in your fire since the day you were born. Father God, I come to you right now on behalf of every person watching this video who is in the furnace. Every man and woman who has been thrown into a fire they did not choose, who was bound by systems they did not build, who was heated by pressures they did not deserve. I thank you, God, that the fire has no authority over your people. I thank you that you did not promise to keep us out of the furnace. You promised something better. You promised to walk into it with us. I speak over every viewer right now. The fire will not burn you. Your hair will not be singed. Your garments will not be scorched, and when you walk out of this furnace, and you will walk out, there will not be even the smell of smoke on you. Every label the system tried to put on you, burned off. Every chain of generational poverty they tied around your wrists, burned off. Every lie about who you are and whose you are, burned off. The fire is not your enemy. The fire is your freedom. Because God is using the very furnace they built to destroy you as the instrument that sets you free. And I decree, in the name of the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that promotion is coming out of this fire, not escape. Promotion. The same system that threw you in will be the system that elevates you. The same mouths that accused you will be forced to acknowledge you. The same government that built the furnace will issue decrees in your favor. Because that is the pattern. That is the promise. That is Daniel chapter 3, verse 30. And it is active over your life right now. Receive it. Believe it. Walk in it. Now, if this word spoke to you, if you felt the fourth man in your furnace while watching this video, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel, because every video we release decodes another chapter of your story that the system tried to bury. Every week we pull back the curtain on what they did not want you to see in your own Bible. And the more you know, the harder it is for anyone to put you back in the furnace. Second, share this video with one person who is in the fire right now. You know who they are. Someone in your family, your church, your circle, who feels like the heat has been turned up 7 times, and they are wondering if anyone is coming. Send them this video. Let them know the fourth man is already there. Third, comment your city right now. Type where you are watching from. Let us see the map of the furnace-proof nation. Let them see that from New York to Atlanta, from Chicago to Houston, from Detroit to Los Angeles, from small towns in Mississippi to military bases overseas. God's people are standing in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and walking with the fourth man. Let the numbers speak. Let the comments testify. They built the furnace for you. They heated it 7 times. They threw you in bound. They killed their own soldiers just getting you to the fire. And you walked out free, whole, promoted. Not even the smell of smoke. That is not luck. That is not resilience. That is not bootstrapping. That is the living God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, walking into the fire with his people and making the flames bow to him. The music is still playing. The system is still demanding that you kneel, but you are still standing. And as long as the fourth man is in the fire with you, no furnace on this earth, not one, has the power to leave a mark on who you are. You were built for this fire. The Bible already described you, and now you know exactly who you are.